We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza. Scott, thanks for coming back. Now, earlier we were talking about the Joe Biden pardon and how that impacts, well, pretty much everything. But I'd like to talk about somebody else's legal troubles. And there's a gentleman that you may have heard of who has recently been going through a few court cases that now that Joe Biden says that the DOJ is open to political pressure and was under such pressure to prosecute his son, Mr. Donald Trump has come knocking.
The once and future president of these United States, indeed. Almost certain to pardon himself, by the way. If I were Donald Trump, I would pardon, like literally, there's all these things like he's going to do day one. Well, minute one would be me signing my own pardon if I were Donald Trump and they had come after me the way they have come after him, previously.
If he's short on time, because obviously there's a lot of promises for a Trump presidency day one, as he's made on the campaign trail, he could actually just copy and paste the Hunter Biden one and say that there's these unfair DOJ prosecutions and then pardon himself for any and all crimes.
Got to go back to birth, though. I'm telling you right now, there's an error in the construction of that. I don't know who wrote that on a weekend for Joe, but there's no reason to limit yourself. Just go right back to birth, and then he'll have to do an updated one, Trump that is, when he gets out of office to cover the interim period. So I would recommend 2 pardons, one day one, just in case, somehow he loses the power of the presidency through some mechanism I haven't even, thought of. And then the second one would be as he's walking out the door. And of course, just so everybody remembers,
post-dated check.
Trump is not able, no president is able to pardon for state charges. They are able to pardon for federal charges. Governors can typically pardon for state charges, and presidents can pardon for federal charges. So for Donald Trump's federal culpability, he can erase that. To the extent that he chooses to do so. And also, if this hasn't been completed by the time he is sworn in, which it may be, those cases may not be active, meaning the Justice Department may have been, fully, or I should say the defense, Mr. Trump may have been granted dismissals in those cases by then. Again, these are the federal cases. Now, the state issues are more numerous to kind of pull apart. So I don't know if you want to get into that right now or you want to talk more federal.
Let's stick with the federal for now. In fact, I think it's quite interesting how it's, and obviously I was aware that president pardons for federal level and governor's pardon for state, because it's actually quite similar to the English system from 940, the year 940, where you had the Kingdom of Wessex under King Aethelstan, who's the grandson of Alfred the Great. He essentially helped unite the rest of the kingdoms, but there were small kings under the great king, and so the small kings could pardon anything that had the power over life and death within their kingdoms, which were the counties now we would look at. But they couldn't pardon anything that the High King, it was Aethelstan, then Edmund, then Edred, I think it was.
Mark, we fought a war, so we wouldn't have to remember these names.
Hey, it's the same system. It's the same system 1,000 years later, 1,100 years later, almost. It's the same system. So anyway, that's for you medieval or pre-medieval scholars out there, or aficionados. So you've got this federal situation, and you've got Donald Trump can pardon himself for the federal crimes, but you've got Jack Smith winding down his 2 cases. Now there's Judge Chutkan and there's Judge Eileen Cannon, who have been overseeing the 2. That's the 2 cases. One is to do with January 6th. One is to do with the classified documents held at Mar-a-Lago. So what's happening there? He's applied for both cases to be wound up, and does that mean dismissed?
Mark, the federal troubles are essentially over at this point, with a good Thanksgiving week for Donald Trump, with various federal courts dropping. I at the Department of Justice's request, which is to not prosecute sitting presidents, that both the classified documents case will go away, as well will the what is a January 6th general insurrection charges, I guess. Trump didn't tweet frequently enough or loud enough for them to stop rioting, I guess it was. But anyway, both of those are gone. But they'll be gone permanently if Donald Trump pardons himself. Some future Justice Department on some future new use of some new power. I mean, we've seen how they've used power against Donald Trump to date. If I were advising the president or the president himself, I wouldn't trust them to just, go along with not resurrecting these charges. It seems like, using every possible weapon against him is what they've tried to do. And we would expect that,
So the pardon is essentially bulletproofing him against future
yes,
things, even though he doesn't need it for now because the cases are being wound up.
Right. And by the way, he doesn't need to necessarily tell anybody that he's giving himself a pardon. I mean, he could literally write it on a piece of notebook paper,
a McDonald's wrapper,
and for real, and put it in his sock drawer, and pull it out in 7 years if it's becomes relevant, something like that. So,
I would love to delve deeper into that because that's also the mechanism by which documents are unclassified, right? Which is what launched.
I know that this is an area of interest for you, and I am interested in it too. But it might be a rabbit hole that's a bit too far down. Which is, when does a document become declassified? Is it on the president's thinking in his mind that it is, or is there some physical act that must accompany the declassification, which is what that case might have gone on to discuss, but it never will be. So
we're going to be back talking justice with Scott Cosenza after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.